Who says this small attack by the al-Qaeda-linked al-Shabaab terror network highlights another example of the Obama administration's downplaying of threats against the United States and its allies. J. Peter Pham is director of the Africa Center at the Atlantic Council. He just recently finished a big study on Somalia, specifically focusing around this book, this particular group. Peter, why do you think this shows a failure in policy, what we're seeing now today?
Well, Jenna, good to be with you again. Unfortunate as circumstances may be, for the last administration and its many international partners of the Somali government and East African governments have been doing this victory lap, saying Shabaab is defeated, we have won. There were senior administration officials who spoke about a Somali model for peacekeeping throughout Africa. And a number of us were concerned that this triumphalism was a little too soon, a little premature, and that Shabaab was shifting tactics from being a guerrilla insurgency into a true terrorist organization, and the eyes of authorities were really off the ball.
Why do you think this is happening now?
Well, Shabaab has been going through a period of transformation. It's lost the territorial command that it had of large parts of south central Somalia. And at the same time, there's been a lot of infighting between those who are interested in fighting in Somalia and those who had a more transnational agenda. And it's quite clear that the emir who has assumed command, a fellow named Ahmed Abdi Godane, who has long-standing links with al-Qaeda, who last year took Shabaab and made it a formal affiliate of al-Qaeda Central, has gotten the upper hand. And with that upper hand, we now see they also got increased operational capacity and tactical knowledge that has been put, unfortunately, to deadly effect in Nairobi.
Who's financing them?
Well, I think they're getting support from a variety of sources. Shabaab made literally tens of millions of dollars during the period when it was in control of large parts of Somalia through various rackets and taxes. So it's got a lot of reserves. It's also, no doubt, getting money from al-Qaeda supporters abroad, certainly financing the foreign fighters and trainers that it's been receiving. So it's a combination of that. And also we've had prosecutions, even in the United States, of people in the Somali community, surely a minority, but nonetheless present there, who were raising money in American communities for al-Shabaab.
And we don't know the answer to the question whether or not there are Americans involved in this attack, but the FBI, and it's been well documented, that there's been some sort of terror pipeline, they call it, from the Twin Cities in Minnesota to Somalia. That's what they're looking at. There's a big Somali community in the Twin City area. What about that connection, Peter? How strong is the recruiting network? And the next question becomes, when do we see an attack by al-Shabaab on our own soil?
Well, that network of support and that pipeline, as you call it, Jenna, bringing material support and recruits to Somalia, it's been going on for several years. It contributed to America's first suicide bomber, Shira Ahmed, several years ago. And it seems to be still active. Al-Shabaab's Twitter feed, before it was shut down over the weekend, released the names of 17 of the attackers, and 6 of those names were traced back to the U.S., to Minneapolis, St. Paul, to Kansas City, Kansas, Tucson, Arizona, Maine, and Illinois. And so there's clearly some indication that Americans were involved. If not 6, certainly it's likely that there were some Americans. And so the question is going to be, if they can recruit from here for attacks abroad, the question is going to be, will there be attacks here in the homeland? There haven't been so far, thank God, but one has to be vigilant.
We're seeing something on our screen that I want to point out to our viewers. Peter, if you just stand by for a second. We, of course, have the smoke in the distance. Leland Vittert told us that we're about 100 yards in that camera shot from the mall. But on the other side of your screen, the right side of your screen, what you are seeing is actually the military, what we believe is the Kenyan military, in some sort of position in a group there outside the fence. What the operation's actually looking like inside and what is transpiring is something that we don't know at this time, but I just wanted to explain some of those live pictures. Peter, the connection to al-Qaeda, let's talk a little bit about that, because there was also a very deadly attack in Yemen by the al-Qaeda affiliate in Yemen on Friday. And I can't help but think about the news in early August that the United States had shut down some of its embassies, concerned about some sort of coordinated attack, a series of attacks by terrorists. Is there any indication, would there be any connection, that we're seeing something like that, simultaneous attacks from different al-Qaeda affiliates?
Well, we don't have the evidence in yet, but certainly we do know historically the extremists, the militants of al-Shabaab in Somalia and al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Yemen have had very close ties, training each other's operatives. Some of the early Yemeni suicide bombers were actually trained in Shabaab camps in Somalia. And then subsequently, when the militants in Somalia were being pushed by African Union peacekeepers supported by the international community, they got support coming from Yemen. So there's been a back and forth that's been there for some time. So I would not be surprised at all if that dynamic was at work here.
Again, so many questions yet unanswered. Your study that you just completed, timely, and will be published next month, Peter. State collapse, insurgency, and counterinsurgency. Lessons from Somalia. We'd love to have you back. It'll be a story that'll continue, Peter. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Jenna.